Who are these people?
All right, well, this is good. We have some time to get to a lightning round, and then we have a little time to take a break before boats at midnight Eastern. So I have a couple of stories that I'm not going to read in full, but did want to show. And again, links like this, links to these will be in the Substack about from the show afterwards. So first one is from Sludge, independent outlet, written by David Moore, talking about how senators, what a surprise, claim to care about starvation in Gaza, then they vote for more bombs. And again, this is not a surprise to anyone that watches this show. But Senate Democrats signed a letter calling for urgent delivery of humanitarian aid in Gaza. It's performative theater because Trump's in office. They all sent the stuff there. Yeah. They did this under Biden and they were silent. But now that Trump is in office...
And they were definitely going to do it under fucking Harris as well.
Right. They were going to hold her accountable. Sure. All right. So, again, they signed a letter, a strongly worded letter. All right. But then they voted last week for the sale of offensive bombs to Israel's military and assault rifles for the IDF, for the police force. That's nice. 27 Senate Democrats voted in favor of a resolution introduced by Senator Sheepdog Bernie Sanders that sought to block the sale of specific weapons to Israel for its war in Gaza. All right. That's not even all of them. That's what they call the offensive weapons, not Iron Dome, not a bunch of other shit. And Senator Bernie Sanders knows that there aren't enough senators that would vote against that. So it costs him nothing to put this up, and then he's got half the progressive left screaming, Bernie's fighting for us. You fucking morons. Okay. Among Democratic senators, the count was a new high watermark for Sanders' resolutions disapproving of a certain offensive weapon sales to Israel.
Yeah,
and represents more than half the caucus. Yeah, well, no, he didn't in this case, but 25 of them still voted with the Republicans. All right. Also last week, 2 Israeli human rights organizations, B'Tselema and Physicians for Human Rights Israel.
B'Tselem.
Right.
I think that's misspelled, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
Shouldn't have an A in there.
Yeah. Okay. They were found by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch in public announcements. They all are calling to end, they're calling it genocide. 19 of the 44 Democratic senators who recently called in a letter addressed to Trump administration officials for humanitarian aid in Gaza did not vote for either of Sanders' resolutions, including Schumer and Gillibrand and Schiff and Padilla from California.
Oh,
what a shock.
Chucky the Shoom.
Other lawmakers whose votes on the...
dude.
Right?
And I'm your friend to the end.
Right. Oh, God. All right. Mark Warner and Cory Booker were the 2 top Democratic recipients in the Senate of earmarked contributions from AIPAC this year. Go figure.
So it wasn't just Rabbi Shmuley on his back like fucking Yoda? It wasn't just that? It wasn't?
Allegedly, that was Shmuley, right?
I thought it was definitely that.
The resolution would have stopped the resolution, which again went through and would have stopped the sales approved by Trump admin of $676 million of bombs and $24 million of firearms to Israel, signaling the senator's disapproval on humanitarian grounds. It didn't do that. Sanders' office has underscored its view.
Especially when, like, I mean, we're going to need all that bomb money that Ukraine is taking and give it to Israel. That's going to be happening at some point. So they're going to have to figure that out.
The packages are just a slice of the enormous weapons sales and military funding that the U.S. approves for Israel annually. In 24, it provided a record $18 billion in military aid to Israel, according to analyst Stephen Semler of Polygraph. And we've covered Stephen Semler articles on this show before. All right. So This again is a somewhat long article. I encourage everyone to read it, reminding people that AIPAC's United Democracy Project, Super PAC, finished June with more than 38.7 million in cash on hand. And last cycle, they made some 61 million in disbursements, with tens of millions dropped on independent expenditures in congressional races. They're buying off all our lawmakers. That's the first one. I also wanted to call attention to Arturo Dominguez at Decolonized Journalism. He wrote a thing about the recent $50 million bounty that the Trump admin put on Maduro, which reeks of war criminal Eric Prince of Blackwater. Nuts. But what he's saying is that this has an MO. This has fingerprints all over it and behind it. All right. And that they just announced that an increase in the reward for Maduro's head. And then Maduro turned around and put a $50 million bonus bounty on Trump's head, which was hilarious. Last year, though, after Venezuela's most recent election, war criminal Eric Prince sought to have the bounty on Maduro increase to $100 million, saying he would lead a violent coup of the Venezuelan government if the Biden administration did so. Prince even recruited Florida Senator Voldemort Rick Scott and Marco Rubio, now Secretary of State, to lead the efforts to secure the money he was seeking. He even began fundraising from individuals with no word on where that money is. What a shock. Eric Prince raising dark money? Never. So, again, this goes into how he wants to be the mercenary that basically takes out Venezuela and runs the country afterwards, or at least controls the puppet. And you got to read the rest of this article to learn about the rest of it. Check out and support Arturo over at Decolonized Journalism. Good dude. ExtremeArturo.substack.com. Third story is another one that it's an Alan McLeod, and he just published this the other day. All right. And this is about Larry Ellison's kid, who now owns a company called Skydance. Well, Skydance bought Paramount, and Skydance bought CBS, then made Barry Weiss like head of CBS News, apparently. Insane. After reaching an agreement with Trump, David Ellison, the son of the second richest man in the world, Larry Ellison, has acquired Paramount Global, the media giant that owns CBS News. Larry Ellison, the largest private funder of the IDF, is deeply tied to the Israeli national security state and counts Benjamin Netanyahu among his closest war criminal friends. His son David has already announced significant changes at CBS, promising unbiased news coverage, as long as it's slanted towards Israel, and varied ideological perspectives, as long as they support Israel, which are widely understood as a signal shift toward right-wing pro-Trump coverage. Pro-Israel coverage, true. 2. Worse still, Barry Weiss, a journalist with a long history of zealous pro-Israel advocacy, no, she's a Netanyahu toady, is being considered as the network's new ombudsman, shaping its political direction precisely because of her pro-Israel, pro-Zionism stance. Mint Press News examines Ellison's close ties to both Trump and Israel, Weiss's extensive career as Israel's most vocal supporter in the U.S., and what this means for the future of free and diverse speech in America. Again, this is one of the main corporate networks now being taken over by a son of a CIA defense contractor, Oracle. Although Skydance, Ellison's media empire, is officially headed by David, it's well understood that Father Larry holds both the purse strings and the reins of power. With a net worth of over $300 billion, placing him second on the Forbes list behind Elon Musk, Larry made his fortune by founding tech giant Oracle. Oracle started as a project for CIA. Indeed, it is named after Project Oracle, a 1970s CIA operation on which Ellison worked. For some time, CIA was Oracle's only customer until it began to win contracts with other agencies of the U.S. national security state. Today, although Oracle's customer base is much wider, it maintains its role as the privatized face of the CIA. Go read this Allen article. It is fascinating. All right, then it goes into, again, Barry Weiss, and The Dissident wrote a great article about that, also did a deep dive on Barry Weiss's background and history. We read through some of it about a month and a half ago, and I called it that Barry Weiss is a Netanyahu toady. It's a segment that's on the Indian INN YouTube channel, as well as one of the lightning round segments here on Indie Media Today and on INN's channel. But the Free Press, all right, that's the Substack that she founded with VC backing. All right, Barry could not have chosen a more Orwellian term for her authoritarian news outlet than taking a wrecking ball to Western journalists, the Western institutions on behalf of Israel, wrote a guy by the name of Autopilot. Even he knows what a fucking pathetic toady. Well, takes one CIA agent to recognize another one, I guess. The Free Press certainly has many powerful backers, having drawn investment from VCs such as Mark Andreessen and David Sachs, PayPal Mafia douchebags, as well as another Zionist, former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz. Yet the price being quoted to Skydance for the sale of what remains little more than a Substack blog is remarkable. He wants to buy it. It just got valued at over $100 million. Now they're trying to sell it to him for between $200 and $250 million. Basically buying a propaganda outlet. For context, in 2013, Jeff Bezos paid $250 million for the Washington Post, which was a lot more impactful worldwide than the Free Press. So, again, read this article by Alan McLeod.
Do it.
All right, real quickly, I did have a couple of GoFundMes and things for people. Again, that's our wall of fame. If you're able to share in a means and able to support, got a couple of bucks in your pocket, hook us up on Cash App or Ko-fi, PayPal, our website or Substacks. You see all the links there on the screen. But I did want to show this. Our friend Joe Blank, we talked about Joe Blank last week and how he had put out a buy me a coffee, that he was really in a tough spot, needs to move out of his house. He was inspired to draw, and if anyone wants to buy these, they're available for sale. This is a pencil drawing of Richard Medhurst and looks like a black and white photograph. It's so fucking lifelike. Original 8.5 by 11 inch pencil portrait of Richard Medhurst done in UD nano diamond graphite on cream drawing paper. He said, I've been wanting to draw him since forever. Finally took the time to devote himself to the effort. He really loves it and hopes his appreciation for Richard's work shows. That's amazing. But he didn't only draw Richard this week. He also drew Whitney Webb. So that's an 8 by 8 pencil portrait in the same style. Audible gave him a second free trial, so he immediately downloaded volume 1 of One Nation Under Blackmail, something he's been wanting to do. After finishing Richard Medhurst the other day, I figured she's great all her own. Why not take the time and draw her? So here you are. The original is available, asking $150 with domestic shipping included. And you can either reply, reach out via DM, or visit his Buy Me a Coffee link if it's still available. All right. Shop, gallery, some of his previous work, random posts. All right. Or if you're just super kind and want to help a semi-disabled, starving artist keep drawing awesome people, any patronage is greatly supported. And again, this is his GoFundMe or his Buy Me a Coffee right here. And you can buy Joe a lucky strike. All right. And then again, I wanted to mention earlier, we talked about Cowboy Kitty, Anthony Malecki's GoFundMe for his sister-in-law, Natalia, working mother taken by ICE. Please help. They've raised over $1,000. They're about a quarter of the way to their goal. She'll probably need more than that. But again, a single mother. I don't even know if she's a single mother. She's a mom Box truck driver taking care of her daughter, been here 9 years, applying for a green card in process, taken into ICE custody, and disappeared basically indefinitely. She was supposed to have a trial, and I thought she was supposed to get out. Last I heard, as of Friday night, she still was not out. Anthony, let me know. Is she out yet or not? I don't know. Terrible. But yeah, please, if you're able to. Like I said a couple times, IndieNewsNow.com. This is what IndieNewsNow.com looks like right now. Look at that. Israel-Palestine News put a thing about catching up with Miss Rachel. Articles from Anti-War News and from The Honest Broker, Ted Joya, who we've read a lot of articles from. I bring his Substack in.
Go to my website.
Antiwar.com again. Israeli forces kill 59 in Gaza over 24 hours, including 35 who were seeking aid. And this update's 24/7 rolling. Also, this is where you can keep the news free and where you can support us with a pay link, or you can pick up some merch in our merch store. This is where you can also watch live. There's a watch live link there. Or you can just break down and say, just show me videos from other creators and INN combined. And there are a bunch of them there. There was Slow News Day from earlier today. And Charlie Robinson's Macroaggressions and Mob Rules from AM Wake Up's channel, etc., etc. You'll see a lot. Even Pro Wrestling Talk with Angel and Miss Witchy Perfect. All right. So go check out IndieNewsNow.com. And then we've got the merch store as well. All right, where you can get some gear.
Right quick.
This is a different merch store than the one that's embedded on the website. I'm working on getting that also embedded. This is a little bit less expensive on the shirts. They're mostly black and white shirts. They're not in different colors. All right. It's mostly about the images that are on it.
My shirt, little bitch.
That's right. Go to my website. So, yeah, man, we did it. We did it. So before we head out of here, these again are the amazing people that support our network financially, that have given us a tip somewhere on Rumble, on YouTube, on one of these places, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, IndieNewsNow.com, which we just showed you, or over at Substack at INNnewsletter.com, where we're about to be live for boats smashing into other boats, do our React show, or at IndieMediaToday.com, where this show has been live the entire for the last couple of hours. Thank you to everybody on Substack at Indie Media Today who has been watching, who's joined. Welcome to Decensored News. I see has popped in. Good to see you. Seven Sign Soul. Thank you for chatting over there. I wish more people did. Fred Edward did. I saw. Good to see everyone. Really, that's it. That we can chat over there, and I'm reading that and I'm seeing it. So thank you again. Support independent media, because we need it more than ever.
We are out of here. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
We made it to Venezuela. So what's happening in Venezuela? We talked about it briefly in the lightning round last week. Dave DeCamp, antiwar.com, and He's done it again. Dirty bastard. No, we love Dave DeCamp. Anti-war news. He is an Indie Media Award honoree, one of the best of the best of the best. Big fan of Dave's. All right. Trump administration deploys 3 U.S. Navy destroyers and 4,000 troops near Venezuela. Yes, we want the oil. And I'm going to get to an article written by somebody sitting in the audience right now, I believe, Descent in Bloom, who wrote all about, did a great piece on Venezuela that's really long. Trump admin deploys 3 U.S. Navy destroyers and 4,000 troops. The U.S. appears to be moving toward another regime change effort against Maduro under unsubstantiated claims that he's leader of a cartel. Last year, they tried to undermine his election, which they even allowed after sanctions had been there. Again, Descent in Bloom will talk about that. The U.S. is deploying 3 Navy destroyers off the coast of Venezuela in a move aimed at pressuring President Nicolas Maduro, signaling what appears to be another push for regime change. One official told Reuters, remember the propagandists for the world, that a total of 4,000 U.S. sailors and Marines are expected to be committed to the Trump administration's efforts in the southern Caribbean region. I remember very clearly that Whitney Webb, before Trump took office, said that what they were likely going to do, and I remember Fiorella and Eva and Vanessa were mentioning that they were speculating Trump was going to bring a lot of the troops back to the Western Hemisphere and focus mostly on Western Hemisphere control. And this is perfect. Between this border control and Mexico is perfectly in line with what they were talking about. U.S. officials say the deployment is an effort to combat threats from Latin American drug cartels, quote unquote, as the U.S. has made the unsubstantiated claim that Maduro is the leader of a cartel. The accusation goes back to the first Trump administration, when then Attorney General Bill Barr indicted the Venezuelan leader over claims of narco-terrorism, which was, again, really just about the oil. And remember, they tried to displace Maduro and replace him with the infamous Juan Guaido. All right. The claim was made over alleged cocaine trafficking, even though data showed at the time that the vast majority of cocaine coming into the U.S. went through the Eastern Pacific rather than Venezuela's Caribbean waters. All right. Also, Colombia. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked on Tuesday about the deployments near Venezuela and if the U.S. was considering putting boots on the ground in the country. I hope not. Leavitt replied, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country, at least ones that we don't allow ourselves, and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not, according to her, is not the legitimate government of Venezuela, except that they were duly elected last year, and only Edison Research, an NED USAID funded outlet, is the only worldwide outlet that claimed so. And they haven't been able to produce the receipts for that. Again, she's claiming that it's a narco-terror cartel, and Maduro, it's the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He's a fugitive head of this cartel, and he has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country. Really? Maduro himself trafficked drugs. R&R.
Not the drugs.
The Trump administration has taken other steps that signal another attempt at regime change in Venezuela, including increasing the bounty on Maduro from $25 million to $50 million and labeling cartels specially designated global terrorists. I've heard that before, including Cartel de los Soles, a term used to describe an alleged network of Venezuelan officials involved in drug trafficking that doesn't actually exist as an organization. Almost like Palestine Action at this point. The U.S. designated the so-called Cartel de los Soles over claims that it supports the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and Mexico's Sinaloa cartel. Of course it doesn't. However, a recently declassified U.S. intelligence memo said it was unlikely that Maduro's government cooperates with or directs TDA, and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has denied that there's any evidence linking Maduro. Get your Sheinbaum to Sinaloa. No link between Maduro and Sinaloa. The memo from the Office
Just
of the
make your
Director
light
of
shine,
Intelligence, all right, dated April 7th, said that while some members of the Venezuelan government may tolerate or cooperate with TDA, Maduro and his top officials view the group as a threat. They're not in favor of them. The Maduro regime probably does not have a policy of cooperating with TDA and is not directing TDA movement to and operations in the United States. That's coming from the DNI themselves. I think that's a woman named Tulsi Gabbard. Earlier this month, Get Your Shinebaum told reporters that the U.S. announcement about Maduro's alleged ties to Sinaloa was the first she had heard about it. Of course it was. On Mexico's part, there is no investigation that has to do with that. As we always say, if they have some evidence, show it. We do not have any proof. Maduro said on Monday that in response to threats from the Trump administration, he's going to deploy millions of members of a pro-government militia across the country. Quote, this week, I'll activate a special plan with more than 4.5 million militiamen to ensure coverage of the entire national territory, militias that are prepared, activated, and armed. He's saying fuck around and find out. On our turf. While the Trump administration has taken steps to add pressure on Maduro, it's also recently reversed a ban on Chevron pumping oil in Venezuela, and Venezuelan oil is now on its way to the U.S. How about that? Speaking of which, again, our friend Dissent in Bloom. The Trump admin is planning an American takeover of Venezuela. Very plain, very simple. For more great takes on this, again, follow Arturo Dominguez at Decolonized Journalism. But this, again, is an outstanding article. Military on their shoreline, sanctions, deportations, and oil deals are pushing Venezuela toward American takeover. When America says freedom, it means oil. It's been a few months. Freedom. It's been a few months since Trump stood on that stage and promised to retake the Panama Canal from China. At the time, it sounded absurd. It still does. The U.S. handed control of the canal back to Panama in 1999. By the way, China doesn't run it. That was another lie from Trump. But the corporate media ran with it like
dumb shit.
Right? Corporate media ran with it like it was a serious policy. Yes. Pumping out headlines that made it seem like America had lost something to China that needed to be reclaimed. While everyone was busy arguing,
we're gonna get back Alcatraz.
We're gonna rebuild
Alcatraz.
No, they just decided to build one in the swamp. And by the way, that
make
got
a new one somewhere else.
Right, they got deemed that they have to take that one down now too. But while everyone was busy arguing over that fiction, the real move was happening off camera when BlackRock, the massive investment firm, quietly signed a $22.8 billion deal to take over the ports at both ends of the canal. See, they didn't need to buy the entire canal, but they bought the gates. That's all that mattered, because if you control the gates, then you control who gets in and gets out. And in the end, Trump got his win in the media, and the Panamanian people got screwed, and BlackRock got their throttle on global trade. As she reminds us, the Panama Canal is one of the most important trade routes in the world. But this goes beyond Panama. It's about Wall Street trying to control global trade routes in order to control the world. Roughly 3/4 of the ships that pass through the canal are tied to U.S. trade, and now that BlackRock controls the ports at both ends, American corporations can now decide who gets to move goods, including oil. And the next target is Venezuela. Why? When most people think of oil, they think of the Middle East, but see, Venezuela actually has the world's largest oil reserve. Their economy is doing poorly, but it's not because they don't have resources. It's because of us. The U.S. knows about their oil. Trump knows, and the Trump's administration is making damn sure only one company, Chevron, gets the profit from it. At least until he can. As of today, they are the only company that the U.S. has allowed to export any Venezuelan oil at all, as you heard Dave DeCamp mention, like in the world. And now they're importing it into the U.S. with the first oil tanker since April arriving just days ago. Meanwhile, every other country in the world gets slapped with a 25% tariff if they even try, all thanks to this executive order quietly signed by Trump in March that states if you import Venezuelan oil, we'll come after you. So, as you can see, we're already using the trade market as a weapon. Read the rest of this article, and once you obtain this knowledge, I want you to take a moment to really think about how bleak this could all get. All right? This is a map of the world oil reserves according to OPEC in 2013. And notice that Venezuela is the darkest spot in the world. So I know what you're thinking. What makes Chevron so special? Who are they compared to the oil execs in Trump's financial sugar daddy book? And remember also previously that Trump's very first Secretary of State was a guy by the name of Rex Tillerson, who was the CEO of ExxonMobil. He has never been one to shy away from working closely with oil companies and realize that oil companies really control a lot of the global trade and flow. In 2025, Chevron isn't just riding shotgun to Trump's presidency, it's co-driving. The millions it poured into his inauguration fund wasn't charity, it was a contract, it was an investment. Chevron bankrolls, Trump blends policy in their favor. See, Trump at first yanked Chevron's license, along with everyone else, to export oil from Venezuela, then reinstated it in July with a rigged twist that left Chevron as the sole foreign player allowed to pump and export oil to the U.S. How convenient. The only profit going to Chevron here, because the caveat was that they couldn't pay Venezuela for the oil, so they had to barter it somehow. From there, the company synced itself to Trump's entire political theater. It partnered with Engine Number One and GE Vernova to build gas-fired power foundries for the AI boom, and even parroted Trump's renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America without hesitation. How embarrassing. So no, this isn't just oil policy, it's state corporate fusion. There's another word for that, where the White House, BlackRock, and Chevron write the rules together, trading democracy for dominance, all while setting Venezuela up to be the next domino to fall. That lays out the chessboard. So Trump, of course, has been saying it. We're going to take the oil. Is this about Syria?
They say he left troops in Syria. You know what I did? I left troops to take the oil. I took the oil. The only troops I have are taking the oil. They're protecting the oil. I took over.
We're taking the oil. We're not taking the oil.
Well, maybe we will. Maybe we won't.
You're protecting the facility.
I don't know. Maybe we should take it, but we have.
Maybe we'll break his legs. Maybe we won't.
Nice country you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it.
Be a real shame if something that happens to it.
Which the U.S. has done time and time again in so many other countries. This is what we do every time we liberate a country from a dictator. Studies have found that countries with large oil reserves are more likely to suffer wars and foreign military interventions. Shocker. Again, we brought that Jason Hickel article that confirms and validates that. This isn't any different. The U.S. has been actively destabilizing Venezuela since the 1920s to try to gain control over their oil reserves too. Documents show that back as early as the start of this century, we've been feeding money to help Venezuela's opposition army enact a democracy with a new leader. Of course, a leader chosen by the United States. Reminders of Mossadegh and Iran and the Shah. Of course, right? In fact, it's happened multiple times. First in 1945, Bush tried it in 2002, and Trump tried in 2019. That's actually when the current sanctions in place initially started against Venezuela. Had he tried a different coup tactic against Venezuela in 2019 and failed, or he had tried, and now he's using the tried and true method, doing the exact same thing the U.S. did to Iran in the 1950s under Operation Ajax. You ever hear about how the U.S. destabilized the Middle East? This is how. Interestingly, she notes, when Joe Biden took office in 2021, he never rescinded those Trump-placed sanctions. But in 2022, he did give Chevron the first special license to export oil from there under them. Priorities, am I right? And I believe, wasn't Chevron the organization that Steve Donziger was suing for poisoning the indigenous people down there in Brazil.
I think so. I don't know about Brazil, but pretty sure.
Maybe it was Colombia. Now, the entire purpose of sanctions and now tariffs is to hurt Venezuela's economy, putting them in a position to topple Maduro's regime. They want that damn oil, and they're not giving up. That's what the murder walrus wanted in 2019. You know, John Bolton. He had a bit of a rough week, I heard.
Right.
This has been what's happening as we've all been scratching our heads at the erratic policies, executive orders, the manufactured trade chaos, the bizarre fixation on retaking things that were never ours in the first place. But see, this entire thing isn't random. It's a strategy. One that merges corporate power, foreign policy, and resource extraction into a single machine, giving the U.S. more money at the expense of innocent people. It begins with the letter F. These sanctions and tariffs don't just squeeze Maduro, they crush ordinary Venezuelans. Again, the point of sanctions. The U.S. has been the single biggest driver of the humanitarian crisis tearing this country apart. A not-so-fun fact, Trump's fight with China isn't about spies or ideology, it's oil. By mid-2025, China was buying over 90% of Venezuela's crude thanks to Trump's tariffs and sanctions. Washington pretends it's about democracy, but the truth is they're furious that China keeps bankrolling the country they want to collapse. That's why hundreds of thousands fled here, only to be sent back by Trump to the same collapsing country they escaped. Not for border control, but for destabilization. It's a tactic. Think back to Trump's recent revocation of temporary protected status for Venezuelans. That wasn't about immigration. It was about weaponizing people as leverage, stripping protections from 350,000 Venezuelans. I remember we reported on that, forcing deportations, funneling them into CCOT, and even twisting the Alien Enemies Act. It was all deliberate. The plan was simple: overwhelm Venezuela's fragile system with returnees, crank up the pressure, and push the country closer to collapse. Every deportation wasn't just cruelty. It was a chess move in the larger game to topple a government and hand the oil fields to U.S. corporations. As you read this, our military is already closing in on this Venezuelan crisis. Right? U.S. military again on the coast of Venezuela. The Iwo Jima, the San Antonio, and the Fort Lauderdale to join 3 guided missile destroyers already there, as reported by Anti-War. On board are 4,500 service members, including a Marine Expeditionary Unit with 2,200 troops ready to deploy. Remember that Maduro said he was deploying 4.5 million to the streets to secure the borders. 2,200 troops? That doesn't sound like very much. Officially, it's a counter-narcotics mission, as we pointed out. In reality, it's the muscle behind everything that she's just laid out. Trump labeled Maduro and his allies narco-terrorists, raised the $50 million bounty on his head, and slapped sanctions designed to break the economy. Now, the Navy gives him the threat of boots on the ground to make it all real. Also, to enforce a blockade. Maduro has responded by mobilizing more than 4.5 million militia members and rallying allies in Cuba, Bolivia, and Nicaragua who are warning that Washington's drug war is just a cover for intervention. Strip away the labels and the propaganda, and you can see it clearly. BlackRock locks down the gates in Panama. Chevron locks down the oil in Venezuela. The military locks down the coastline. It's one machine moving in sync, and Trump supplying the show while corporations cash in and ordinary people pay the price. Of course, we know about America's pick for Maduro's replacement because our friend Golden Monarch has been talking about her for a while. If Trump had succeeded in 2019, the administration's chosen leader would have been someone to line the pockets of his rich friends with even more oil money. Juan Guaido! We know that name. He's turned into a party joke.
Mm-hmm.
But much to Trump's dismay, Venezuela did not fall in 2019. Juan Guaido was run out of the country and had the shit beaten out of him in the streets by the people. That was hilarious. Former National Security Advisor, murder walrus John Bolton told us about it several times. Once on CNN, another time in his own memoir, the same John Bolton who had his home raided. This week, quote, I saw what it took for opposition to try and overturn an illegally elected president, and they failed. The notion that Donald Trump was half as competent as the Venezuelan opposition leader is laughable. Of course, Marco Rubio is already hard at work to choose a leader for the American-occupied Venezuela. You probably haven't seen this, but back in May, Rubio actually had met with several Venezuelan opposition leaders, but only named Maria Corina Machado and Juan Pablo Guanipa in the official memo that followed. He then paints Maria as a martyr in this document. It almost feels like a precursor to her rise, yeah? Now it turns out that she's working with the Bitcoin creeps. You combine those two things, mark my words, if Venezuela falls, you can look for the U.S. government to place Juan Pablo Guanipa or, more likely, Maria Corina Machado, because she's friendly with the bankers, as the new U.S.-placed Democratic leader, even though nobody elected them. So, here's her take on Maria Machado, handpicked by the Asian Council of the Americas, right? In June 2025, a powerful business group called the COA, backed by Big Oil, including Chevron and corporate America, held an event with the very same Maria Corina Machado. How convenient. Instead of focusing on human rights or democracy, the meeting was about money. They told banks, oil companies, and investors that Venezuela's crisis is an opportunity to get rich if Maduro's government falls. I'm not going to play this. I think this is a long video. Yeah, it's almost an hour.
Well, good morning, everyone.
All right. Parasites. $1 trillion opportunity. The global upside. Gross. The Americas Society. Machado laid out a plan to sell off public industries, bring in the IMF and World Bank, and make it easier for foreign companies to operate with cheap labor and few rules. What a great representation of American democracy. She's Juan Guaido 2.0 in a skirt. So here are her final thoughts. Here's the big picture. Panama was never about China. It was about BlackRock controlling the gates. Venezuela was never about cartels. It was about Chevron controlling the oil. And the U.S. military on the coast is not about drugs. It's about enforcing the deal. This is state fusion. No, it's state fascism dressed up as foreign policy, a machine where Trump provides the theater, Wall Street writes the contracts, and the Pentagon brings the guns. Again, fascism is the merger of state and corporate. That's exactly what this is. And support Dissent in Bloom.
Capitalism.
She just passed 11,000 free subscribers on Substack. Congratulations to her for that. And she's ranking it also on the paid sub. So if you're able to, and of means, support her with a monthly or annual paid subscription. Fascists hate an educated mind. Share this also to spread the word. Talk about it. Restack it. Let the world know what we're really up against. We're in this together. All right. And support independent media. So, what's up, everyone? Fuck Venezuela, too. Well, no, support Venezuela. Fuck the Trump administration. Maduro isn't exactly a good guy. But like Putin, he's being set up here. Right? And if he retaliates in any way, they're going to call him a dictator and a thug and a drug dealer. They've already set this narrative up, right?
You've already done that.
So that's what's happening here. All right, we're still going to get to boats. I did have a lightning round. Before we do that, again, fund the media you want to see. Support independent media. We do not get funded on YouTube. The ways to do that are Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, over at IndieNewsNow.com, at INNNewsletter.com, where we're going to be live for boat smashing other boats in a little bit, and at IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live now and have been since the beginning of the show. Love you all. Thank you so much for everybody who's here tonight. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I truly believe that. And we'll see you soon. I love you all. Have a great night, everyone.
We go party. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
And we're going to show some other people that need some money too, because it's not just Aspen. Unfortunately, I've never seen it to this level. So many people in real deep financial danger and hurting. But before we do all of that, I do want to get to the lightning round because there were some other news things happening that I wanted to reference and talk to people about. So first, this one was funny. You know about those Epstein files that everybody keeps asking about? Well, the Epstein archive was created. 404 Media puts up that a data hoarder figured out how to use AI to create a searchable database of the Epstein files. Now, these are the homogenized Epstein files. These are the ones that have been put out by the Trump administration, and I don't trust AI on top of it. But I just found it interesting that though they're trying to keep the files buried and keep that information quiet, that AI is being used at the same time as a weapon to release that information. Now, I don't think, again, that they're going to let all the information out and that in time, we'll end up getting gatekept and who created those prompts and exactly what databases they're referencing would be interesting, but I'm guessing that you're not going to see the flight logs, for example. But maybe I'm wrong. But check that out. The website is over at Data Hoarder over on Reddit. All right. The link here is over on GitHub. Total cost 0, hosting cost 0, epstein-docs.github.io. I'm not going to do that. It probably is bugged. But just interesting that they were able to document that and put it out there. I also wanted to mention about the Nobel Prize winner, whatever another propaganda thing. In case you have not been paying attention, the Nobel Prize has been captured and now is being used as a tool to foster regime change and to push narratives and to push somebody that they are using, that they are looking to implement.
Always has been.
To take over a country. Well, so Maria Corina Machado is the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize honoree. Okay. She is, according to Ali Moro, a Zionist, all right, and a MAGA CIA Mossad agent set up to sell out Venezuela to American corporations for profit. Many Latina leaders deserve that platform, and she's not one of them. Don't be fooled. She's not a good representative for Latinas. Please get educated. So I brought a funny video that Descent in Bloom actually made, funny enough. So hang on, I'm going to have to reset this, I'm guessing. And then Yeah, because Instagram sucks when it comes to this thing. So let me refresh this and make sure that we can hear this video, which we will be able to. Here we go. Whoop. And volume.
That Trump didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. They gave it to someone that deserves it. Someone from Venezuela. I bet he's going to be so mad because he hates Venezuela. So I didn't want to have to be the one to tell you this, but her winning is actually a win for Trump. And it's not a good thing. Wait, what? Yeah, I know most people are happy because they're like, yeah, it's not Trump, it's someone that deserves it, someone fighting for democracy, but she's working with Trump. She actually dedicated the award to him already. In 2017, Trump tried to take over Venezuela because he wanted their oil. Came on video and said it, and they failed. So they're trying again this year, and she's the leader that's going to be placed in office once the United States overthrows Venezuela, if it's allowed to happen. Why do you think they keep bombing those boats? It has nothing to do with narco-terrorists or whatever they say. And she was actually endorsed by Marco Rubio in an official memo earlier this year. Oh yeah, and she also had a presentation that she gave not that long ago in front of the Council of America. It's a big, huge coalition of businesses like Chevron. But instead of focusing on human rights or democracy, she was telling them how much they could benefit from the United States taking over Venezuela. It's on YouTube still. You can still watch it to this day. Wait, so you're saying that her being picked is actually good for him because it helps to create the narrative that Venezuela needs to be invaded by America for democracy? Well, yeah, because if you think that this lady's a hero because she's trying to achieve democracy in Venezuela, then you're not going to really pay any attention when they're bombing Venezuelan boats. I'm so happy that Trump didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a humorous way of explaining to a shitlib just why they should not be happy that a female Latina, they basically manipulated shitlibs by using identity politics. All right. Hilarious that they did the thing. They weaponized identity politics to get the shitlibs excited that they promoted a woman of color, a brown woman of color, and amplified her and elevated her over Trump. But yeah, not exactly. She's also a Bitcoin Zionist, and she's a big Bitcoin advocate. And I know Golden Monarch has been all over that as well. He's been talking about her for a while. Hassan Mafi.
Which,
go ahead.
I find this whole thing like, we know plenty of journalists who went to Venezuela during that election. Everything was above board. Like, I know McLeod, I know Fee and them.
Rania.
Right.
Okay.
Bunch of them.
Yes.
But it's just, let's just delegitimize another country's elections because ours are super above board and super good, right? Like, okay.
And just to remind people that who did they give the recent Nobel Peace Prize to? Well, in 2021, it was a Russian opposition figure who they had tried to elevate to oppose Putin. In 2022, it was a Belarusian figure that they were looking to implement in a color revolution to lead the country. In 2023, there was a failed color revolution in Iran, and they elevated this Narjeh Mohammadi. Okay. And now you've got Maria Corina, the Venezuelan opposition, who also was on Juan Guaido's side, on Juan Guaido's team, by the way, in 2019. It's hilarious and disgusting that they would weaponize identity politics like this, but they knew that the shitlibs would back this because it was, and they wouldn't look too deep into who she was, but her identity fit the profile that would make them happy. Okay.
Yep.
Finally.
And before that, we had fucking. No, I missed it.
Right. And finally, I wanted to point out, fuck Trump and ICE and all that's going on with deportations and Chicago. I didn't get into it, but there's a lot of stuff happening, and there are certainly other channels to follow to do that. I had a lot I wanted to cover tonight, so I didn't have a chance to get to that. But this story out of ProPublica kind of broke me a little bit. And I'm not going to read it because it's really long, but I'm going to put the link in the description. I don't want to be here anymore. Right. They tried to self-deport and then got stranded in Trump's America. All right. This is the story out of ProPublica, a
man
woman
named Brady.
No, a woman that tried to self-deport with her family. They were promised $1,000 to self-deport to help them set their life back up at home. All right. First, they waited for plane tickets that never came. Their whole life got displaced. They gave up their apartment, and then they didn't get tickets. Like, it's this whole story, right? It was mid-May, and Perez, a Venezuelan mother of two, couldn't survive on her own in Chicago anymore. Why? Because she'd been relying on charity for food and shelter ever since her partner had been detained by ICE after a traffic stop earlier this year. Sound familiar? This 25-year-old woman thought it would be safer to return to Venezuela with her children than to stay in the United States. Her request for asylum was still open, and she had a permit to work legally, but so did a lot of other Venezuelans getting picked up on the streets and taken into custody. She was literally afraid to leave her house. But then in the app, DHS offered $1,000 exit bonus to people that could book a free flight to any foreign country under Project Homecoming. Right? They tried to do that through the CBP Home app. Months passed. Her partner got deported. In July, she said she got a call from someone at CBP. This whole story is in nightmare. She ended up getting deported and self-deporting and flying to Venezuela. But the money never arrived. The $1,000 hasn't arrived. And they've been trying to scramble to figure out what the hell to do back in Venezuela. Good luck getting that money from the Trump administration.
Especially in Venezuela.
Right?
You know, they'll claim you're some cartel member once they get it. Right. They'll bomb your boat in a crime in international waters.
So,
you know?
Yeah, fuck the Trump admin for that nonsense as well.
Yeah.
And just real quick, I do want to put up what's this? Oh, that's my one-on-one with Shanda. That's okay. That's going to be next. Real quick, if you're able to, it means please support this live stream. Please support this channel. Please support independent media.
Please.
This is the amazing people that already do that and have done that. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. You got paypal.me/Indie News Network, at INNnewsletter.com and IndieMediaToday.com. And then we've got IndieNewsNow.com where we're live as well. I also, again, wanted to shout out the GoFundMes that we do every week. And again, talking about stuff like this is how we got help for Aspen, how we've gotten more money raised for Shanda. And again, I cannot be more grateful. Last night, Beauty and the Boomer ran this one-on-one that I recorded earlier this week on Thursday with Shanda. We talked about independent media. We talked about her history and the entire space and where it's gone and how she got into this to begin with and how it's evolved. And then also her battling small cell lung cancer and what she's been through with insurance and what she's struggling with right now in going through treatments again. So if anyone's able to, please support her GoFundMe. Last night, we ended up, after that was run, raised about $1,000, which is going to help her get through this month. So thank you to everyone who did that, specifically to the one person that gave a ton of money last night. But thank you. I understand they don't want to be shouted out by name, but you know who you are. Thank you. So that's GoFundMe for Shanda. Of course, we also have what's going on with our friend Cowboy Kitty, Anthony Malecki's sister-in-law, Natalia. We talked about ICE deporting people a little while ago. Natalia is currently in detention. She doesn't have a hearing for another few weeks. And they still want to deport her to Ukraine. She did it right. She has permission to work here. She was a truck driver, but she's been held indefinitely, 4 months. Her daughter, they want to deport also now to Ukraine, apparently. At her latest immigration hearing, she broke down and started crying, begging to receive bail for the nonviolent misdemeanor, and the judge got mad and denied her. Yeah, now that was weeks ago. 2 weeks later, still flight risk. Thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate that. And Anthony put in the chat the other night an update that it's going to be at least another couple weeks before her hearing. So if you can contribute to her GoFundMe, they could really use some help and support. Again, I know everybody's hurting and everybody needs money right now. This really hasn't moved very much in a long time, and anything anyone can do, it really makes a big difference, even $5 or $10. And then finally, I want to tell the story, and luckily we're not asking at this point for final expenses at this point, but our friend Rich Slutsky from Counterspin, he got news earlier this summer that his father had a stroke and was in hospice care, was in the hospital. Then he was in hospice care, and he got a call over the weekend that his dad passed away. And he got a call from the funeral home. They won't take payments. I have until Wednesday to fully fund his cremation. Under state laws, they can only hold the remains for 10 days, and we're already on day 3. I gave him $200 as good faith payment just to shut them up. How the fuck am I supposed to come up with $1,645 in a week? Originally, it was $3,000 that they knocked down to $1,845 because he was a veteran. All right. There's his proof of payment. People ended up giving him PayPal to help. He also said that the lawyer ended up helping out. Where is it? He said, I can breathe now. The lawyer I've been working with was very kind and offered to pay it forward and cover the balance due out of any potential settlement. Thank you to everyone who stepped up and chipped in. It means a lot to know when things look bleak. I can rely on the kindness of strangers. Mutual aid, man, mutual aid. This is why we do this every week, because people need help and nobody's doing shit to help them. We just have to help each other. And as long as I have a platform, I'm going to do what I can to help the people around us that need help, that don't have a voice. So I asked Rich that is there anything I can do or that we can tell people who want to help? And he said, no, pretty much it's all anyone can do, but thanks for thinking of us. But rest in peace to your dad, and we're thinking of you, and we love you, Rich, and sorry for your loss. And fuck this system for being so harsh and cruel right now to so many people. I also want to, again, I've referenced IndieNewsNow.com. That is, again, our React show. You can see we're going to be live later on for that. That was the uncensored votes from last week. We're going to be live on Rumble. We'll be live on YouTube at INN8. The Ocho is our channel over there. We're also going to be live on all the other INN channels for boat smashing and other boats. So, wow. But yeah, Indie News Now. We'll be live there. If you go to Watch Live, you'll be able to watch it there. There's also a merch store where you can pick up a t-shirt, a beanie. It's starting to get cold out. So if you're in one of those areas, pick up a beanie. If you so are inclined, pick up a tank top, pick up a sweatshirt, a hoodie, or a sticker. We got them all there. And you get there by going to IndieNewsNow.com and click on the merch link. So I'm waiting. Buy my merch right quick. Look at my shirt, little bitch. I'm waiting for it. I don't hear it, but
yeah. Are you? I should make you wait forever.
I was excited to hear that.
Forever.
Go to my website. Buy my merch right quick.
There you go.
Thank you. So, all right.
You're welcome.
Thank you to everyone for hanging with me through all of that and through ranting and raving. Yes, I agree that it's a beautiful. It's a hell of a start. You know that the funeral homes are a scam. Descent in Bloom. All right, poor guy. Glad his lawyer helped. Me too. I mean, I was definitely. It was on my mind. Metal Mama Sue. Yes, we do. We're on our own 100%. All we have is each other. Thank you, Natalie. Bless your beautiful heart too. You know, you're one of the people that inspires me. Yes, and Golden Monarch appreciates Rich's works. per Substack. Absolutely. Love you all. Man, this is
Let's all go to the lobby.
it's time to get ourselves a treat, right? Have ourselves a treat. One more time before we get out of here, support independent media by doing it these ways. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. Go to ashv.com/Indie News Network. Got paypal.me/Indie News Network. That site I just showed you, IndieNewsNow.com. You can go to INNnewsletter.com. We're about to go live there. So if you subscribe to INN Newsletter, you'll get an alert on the mobile app for the live stream. And we've been live at IndieMediaToday.com for the last couple hours. And we will publish this live stream tomorrow morning as a podcast replay. We do that every Monday morning. We publish it both to Spotify as well as now to Substack. So if you did not catch the whole thing at first, you can go back and watch it at your convenience, completely ad-free at IndieMediaToday.com. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you all. We'll see you soon, fam.
Bye. Have a great time.
Hasta la vista, baby. I'll be back.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
A top independent journalist, Arturo Dominguez over at Decolonized Journalism, does a hell of a job. And he's been doing it a long time for Unicorn Riot, for a bunch of other independent outlets, and on his own as a freelancer at Decolonized Journalism. Now, he put in experts denounce intervention in Venezuela as the U.S. military buildup continues. I don't think that's much of a surprise to anyone, right? Experts condemn the U.S.'s recent actions in the Caribbean, its threats against Venezuela, and its history of coercion in Latin America. That's a kind way of saying regime change, right? So we know what's been happening. Last week, three United Nations specialists in human rights, extrajudicial executions, and the international order issued a statement denouncing the U.S.'s actions against Venezuela. How many boats have been bombed now, like just out of the water? I think we're up to 10, Reef?
7 or 8, I think. Yeah, something like that.
I thought we were up to as many as 10.
I've not kept count specifically, but
that could be. All right. Experts decried the covert and clandestine actions that the U.S. is employing while condemning the history of similar interventions and the lasting harm the United States has done over decades in Latin America. Fair. The experts are now warning of the dangers of U.S. military buildup. We're going to talk about that in a second. That the recent announcements by the White House regarding the use of lethal force in international waters are without legal justification, for sure. And that possible covert or direct military action against Venezuela constitutes a violation of the UN Charter, which they don't give a shit about. They essentially called out the United States for fabricating enemies to justify a supposed right to defense, resulting in extrajudicial murder in the Caribbean. Yeah, that's what's been happening. Quote, covert action and threats of using armed force against the government of Venezuela by the United States violate Venezuela's sovereignty and the UN Charter.
Yep.
Yes. And Trump doesn't seem to give a flying fig, as the revolution continues, just pointed out. When did the U.S. ever care about the UN? I don't know. Right. Good day, Harps. Good to see you everywhere. Marlon Weems, how are you, sir? All right. So, according to this statement, the experts have been in contact with the United States and have urged leaders to cease unlawful attacks and threats and respect international law and reaffirm its commitment to multilateralism.
Whatever that means.
Uh-huh. And then it continued to prompt them with a strongly worded letter to adhere to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter that they wipe their ass with daily. A request that the admin seems willing to ignore, obviously, based upon the deployment of the aircraft carrier Gerald Ford and its strike group to the Caribbean. Right? The USS Ford's carrier group, which includes 5 destroyers and is currently deployed to the Mediterranean, adds the additional troops sent to Trinidad, adds to the additional troops that were sent to Trinidad and Tobago. Allegedly, they're also now talking about using Puerto Rico as another base for this operation, potentially. The USS Gravely, which will later be followed by the U.S. Marine Corps' 22nd Expeditionary Unit, blah, 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 is officially in Trinidad and Tobago to conduct military exercises over several days and is set to leave on October 30th. It should be noted that Trinidad is just 7 miles from the Venezuelan coast at its nearest point. Now, what's really interesting is I remember when there were other military exercises happening in the Baltic Sea right around the summertime of 2022. And about 3 months later, Nord Stream went kaflooey. So could there be some operations happening underwater too? Quite possibly. Look for an internet cable possibly to be cut. Statement from the UN experts came just 3 days after the UN Security Council warned of mounting risks to regional peace after the extrajudicial killings of alleged drug smugglers and fishermen. I wouldn't even call them alleged, because the only person that's alleged who they are is the Trump admin. But they've produced no receipts and no no evidence at all. So how can you say that they're even alleged? It's literally just blatantly accused by the Trump administration without evidence. 3 experts are George.
Provided zero to anybody.
Right.
Trust us.
Just trust us, bro.
We killed this guy, but he was horrid.
We took out that boat. It was terrible. It was covering drugs. It was carrying drugs, fentanyl, cocaine, even though cocaine doesn't really come from Venezuela. That's a whole other story. Right? So you have your 3 experts here, right? You got one who is an independent expert on promoting a democratic and equitable international order. Okay. You've got Ben Saul, who's a special rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. Right? And then you also have another special rapporteur, this one on extrajudicial summary of arbitrary executions. So you seem to have a team of experts that know what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. That are all saying that, yeah, this is a problem, that they're violating sovereignty, that they're breaking whatever international laws and treaties we've all signed to and agreed to mutually. But for whatever reason, we're just allowed to violate it. And there are no consequences. There are no repercussions. and it just happens. At some point, there might be repercussions, but we haven't seen any happen quite yet. Now, if what we have seen in repercussions is in trade, in people moving their business away from doing business with the United States, in BDS, effectively. Also because the tariffs have made it to the point where they really have no choice but to seek elsewhere in some cases because we've made U.S. goods too expensive for them. Right? So that's the first half of what's happened in Venezuela. The second half of it came from an Indie Media Award honoree at Anti-War, Dave DeCamp. And this happened the other night. U.S. flies B-1 bombers near the Caribbean in the latest provocation aimed at Venezuela. Now, I listened to somebody talking about how they just want to get Maduro, how they just want to get the oil. But I seem to recall Maduro basically offering them the oil, if I'm correct. So it's not just about the oil. They also want a puppet that they have.
Not all of it.
That they can control and is friendly
they want
to
complete
them.
Control.
Sure they do. But I think that it's more about getting rid of Maduro because he's perceived to be a socialist, even though he's more authoritarian. But he was also, he was elected. He won an election last year that everyone else in the world certified and signed off on, and their Supreme Court. People are like, oh yeah, the Supreme Court that's friendly to him or whatever. No, they're Supreme Court. They have independence, but yeah, it's crazy to me that. So we're flying 2 B-1B bombers over the Caribbean on Thursday in the latest provocation in the region aimed at Venezuela. Right, but it's not just Venezuela. I think they also want to provoke Petro. Because Petro in Colombia has also been pretty outspoken against Trump, right?
Yeah. Yep. At least recently.
Right. A U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal, boo. So take it with a grain of salt. A, because it came from a U.S. official, and B, because it came through the Wall Street Journal, that the bombers took off from Dyess Air Force Base in Texas on Thursday and flew near Venezuela. When asked about the report, Trump said it was false, but the bombers were spotted on flight trackers, and other U.S. officials confirmed that the flight took place. So, like usual, somebody's lying, and it's usually Trump, as usual. Right? Last week, the U.S. flew 3 B-52 bombers near Venezuela in what the U.S. Air Force called a bomber attack demonstration mission.
It sounds like what fucking Reagan used to do. Fly by Russia and shit. You know? Like, same kind of shit.
U.S. Special Ops helicopters have also flown within 90 miles of Venezuela as part of a major U.S. military buildup in the region, which has involved the deployment of 8 naval warships so far. Provocations come amid reports that the U.S. is preparing to bomb Venezuela. What did they do, again, as a sovereign nation to justify being bombed? I guess they don't have to do anything anymore. And as Trump is threatening to launch strikes against alleged drug shipments on land, they still have yet to produce again any evidence about any kind of drug trafficking. While it is the pretext for the military campaign, U.S. officials have been clear that the real goal is regime change in Venezuela. I seem to recall doing a report that Victoria Nuland went to South America last year. And for us saying, literally, watch this space for a regime change operation. I honestly think that this was started under Biden / Harris, and that this was just continued by the Trump administration. This was already on the books and planned. The U.S. has also bombed at least 7 alleged drug boats, again, alleged only by the U.S. without evidence, in the Caribbean, and 2 in the Eastern Pacific near Colombia. Like I said, they are also going after Petro. This is personal. The U.S. War Department, the Department of War, has provided...
So stupid.
Thank you. No evidence to back up its claims about what the vessels were carrying or to back up its assertion that the people it has been killing are narco-terrorists, a term that the administration has been using to justify extrajudicial executions at sea. And support antiwar.com.
Fucking whatever.
Support Dave DeCamp.
Yeah, go do that.
He actually did a 1 hour sit down with Ryan Christian at Last American Vagabond yesterday. And it was the first time they've ever done an interview together. They were like, Ryan, it came out during the interview that Dave's like, I was looking it up and it's like, have we done... Amazingly, never happened before. So hopefully it won't be the last. It was a really good sit-down conversation between the two of them. Those are two of the guys that I rely on most for what's really happening in the Middle East, in Venezuela, with the duopoly and the two-party illusion that they're trying to push forth. So again, Last American Vagabond and antiwar.com. Go follow them both. Support independent media. We amplify and talk about independent sources here like Arturo, like antiwar.com. And because we do so, we are not monetized by YouTube. And therefore, we ask you to support us in other ways. If you can do so, the best ways to do that are at Cash App, $, Indie News Network. Over at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. You see them all up on that slide there. That's our wall of fame. All these amazing people have already supported our channel. We really love you and so grateful for everyone that can do that. I know times are really tough right now. PayPal.me/Indie News Network if you got PayPal. At IndieNewsNow.com, there's a way to put in a credit card or Amazon Pay or basically any other way you can think of through Stripe. And then we've got our Substacks. We're live over at IndieMediaToday.com. Hello to everyone watching over there. And then I just waved to my screen, even though you can't see me because I'm a tool. And then INNNewsletter.com. That's the network's newsletter where we put out a weekly update of all the activity that happens from everybody at the network. And a couple of podcasts like INN News goes live over at INN Newsletter on Wednesday nights. And Angel in the afternoon, actually he goes to his. Boats goes live at INN Newsletter and also Jesse Jet. And those are all podcasts over there, as well as INN One-on-One. When I do a one-on-one, that'll go over there and it's its own podcast that you can download and watch and listen to over there. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you all. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
I'll be back.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
We're going to start with what's going on in Venezuela. And Venezuela is something that we've been talking about for months. And I'm proud that we've been talking about that for months. And we're kind of ahead of the story, thanks to the people at Anti-War and all the sources that we follow, the independent sources that have not taken their eye off that ball. But I start with Indie Media Award honoree Matt Kennard, formerly of Declassified UK, co-founder, and now he's just on his own as an independent. Not a single plane flying over Venezuela, a country of 30 million people with the world's largest oil reserves. Its airspace has been closed by the U.S. president sitting in the White House 2,000 miles away. International law is a chimera. The world is run like a mafia, and Washington is the Don. And there's all the planes showing all around Venezuela's airspace. Right down to there. That is, wow. Because if you fly over there, there's a chance that you may end up shot down. And nobody wants to have their plane shot down. That Trump or the White House or the administration put out an edict to all the commercial airliners saying don't fly into Caracas. That's a major world capital. That should not be allowed to happen. This is an act of war. That's the way I see this. By shutting down somebody else's airspace, that's an act of war. So I went to another Indie Media Award honoree, Popular Resistance, and they're also a 501c, and they're looking for funding. Everybody really is looking for funding today on Giving Tuesday. But this article by Roger D. Harris from literally yesterday, that Trump commands Venezuela's heavens closed. Okay. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela closed in its entirety on November 29th. Yet the U.S. has as much legal and moral authority to shutter the skies over Venezuela as the Venezuelans do to close the putting greens at Mar-a-Lago. Yes, that's ridiculous. But not any more so than D.C.'s phony pretext of drug interdiction for their deadly regime change operation against Venezuela. It's nuts. To date, where are we? The Yankee military has murdered over 80 people in alleged drug boats in the Southern Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, but has yet to confiscate a single milligram of narcotics from Venezuela. Strange. The Venezuelan authorities, in contrast, have seized 64 tons of cocaine this year that were being transited through their country and have done so without killing a single person, because killing them was the plan in the first place. However, Venezuela's interdiction pales in comparison to the 400 tons of cocaine smuggled into the U.S., enabled by Juan Orlando Hernandez, according to the Department of Justice. He's a former Honduran president and a right-wing Washington ally. He was convicted in a U.S. jury trial for running his country like a narco state, taking bribes from the Sinaloa cartel kingpin El Chapo, like literally Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The day before Trump closed Venezuela's airspace, as part of his so-called crackdown on drug cartels, he announced his intention to pardon that convicted cartel enabler who's serving a 45-year sentence in a penitentiary in West Virginia. I thought it was Virginia, but neither here nor there. If Washington succeeds at blocking air travel to Venezuela, which it has, the action has an added cruelty because it coincides with the winter holidays when overseas Venezuelans would return home to visit family. Many of these migrants are economic refugees driven from their homeland largely by the U.S.'s unilateral coercive measures designed to asphyxiate Venezuela's economy. The CEO of America's empire has ambitions for vast powers and now claims dominion over the firmaments. Yet, the U.S. Congress has not approved his no-fly zone, not like they have to. We talked about that last week. Nor has any international authority such as the UN, and certainly not the host country, which under international law, quote unquote, whatever that means, has sole control over its own airspace. Yes, act of war. Even David Deptula, the retired general who enforced a no-fly zone in Iraq, questioned Trump's declaration. Such an act constitutes a blockade and is, as such, considered an act of war. Somewhere I said that. More precisely, an escalation of an ongoing hybrid war against Venezuela. Again, because we want the oil, we're taking the oil, it's all about the oil.
Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you.
No, it's not really nice at all. This offensive has taken many forms. Unilateral economic sanctions, coup and assassination attempts, a dual government, diplomatic intrigue, election interference, an astroturfed opposition, and a psychological pressure campaign by a compliant corporate press. Holy shit. The hybrid war is as deadly as a hot war, having taken over 100,000 lives by denying essential food, medicines, and fuel to the most vulnerable, according to a UN special rapporteur. Okay. Washington's quarter-century siege of Venezuela has failed in its objective of regime change so far. For the imperial hegemon, the success of the Venezuelan resistance has led it to push its campaign to the brink of military invasion, with the no-fly zone declaration serving as an ominous harbinger. They've been saying that they're going to send ground troops in there. It's just a question of when. I mean, they're trying to antagonize, I believe, in order to provoke a response so that they can then claim that they were unprovoked and that they were attacked unprovoked, which is hilarious. The political leadership of Venezuela's Bolivarian revolution includes Maduro, Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello, no relation to Kit, and Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez. These officials are distasteful to Trump and Rubio. The State Department designated them as leaders of a foreign terrorist organization, the Cartel de los Soles, that doesn't really exist. But then again, the current U.S. president is distasteful to 60% of his constituents, and the so-called Cartel de los Soles doesn't exist, as I just said. And that's a link to an anti-war article about that. In 2002, the U.S. backed an abortive coup that attempted to overthrow then-President of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, who was restored to power by a spontaneous uprising of the people. That event had a century-old precedent, as Venezuelan-Canadian sociologist Maria Paez-Victor recalls, that in 1902, English and German gunboats attacked Venezuela with their Marines invaded. The Europeans were demanding payment of outrageous loans that their banks had forced upon the country. The president at the time, Cipriano Castro, had no money and had hardly any armed forces, but he appealed directly to the people in a proclamation that became a historic monument to the love of Venezuelans for their country. Its opening sentence is a call to defend the land from invaders. Venezuelans, the insolent foot of the stranger has profaned the sacred soil of our homeland, quote unquote. People rushed with whatever arms they could lay their hands on. Even our newly sainted Dr. Jose Gregorio Hernandez, a veritable man of peace, rushed to give aid to the wounded. Foreign Marines were routed. They never expected such a firm, unbeatable stand. They thought it would be a piece of cake. They were deadly wrong. When was the last time we invaded somewhere and it didn't result in disaster and sustained long-term expense and troops left? Insane. DC now stands at the crossroads of its own making. Having failed to crush Venezuela through all these different measures, it now toys with measures that violate the zone of peace proclaimed by the 33 members of the community of the Latin American states and Caribbean states. That's CELAC. 33, that's an interesting number. I wonder how they came up with that number. The U.S. attempt to impose a no-fly zone exposes a desperate imperial drive for domination. I mean, desperate Sure, but it's certainly muscling and strong-arming, and it seems to be working. The Bolivarian Revolution, having endured more than 25 years of siege, remains rooted in the same collective resolve that once repelled foreign gunboats and reversed the 2002 coup. I sure hope so. Should DC escalate further, it will not confront a compliant colony, but a nation prepared to defend its airspace, institutions, and sovereignty, joined by a genuine international community in solidarity. So far, the international community has not been joining them in solidarity, and they have not done anything to defend their airspace, to my knowledge, to this point. So this is flowery and hopeful and rose-colored glasses. Roger Harris concludes with, meanwhile, CNN reports massive disapproval of Trump's Venezuela policy, of course, and the Simon Bolivar Airport was operating normally as of the time that was written. Massive disapproval of Trump's Venezuela policy. He doesn't give a shit. He's already won his last election. And I don't believe the Steve Bannon stuff. He doesn't care. All he cares about at this point is enriching his own family and making sure that they get out of this presidency with no lawfare attached to them and set up to support their benefactors for the next couple of decades, because the Democrats are a complete mess on top of it. Nobody else can get their stuff together. These guys have bought off half the election software already, and they have people in a lot of positions of power, including 2/3 of the Supreme Court. So they should be able to run the table for a while, unfortunately, if you look at it from an objective perspective.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, some people said they were. I don't know if that's really the case or not, but that certainly was Trump's point at the debates, and it got people's attention. It certainly worked. He's a carnival barker, I'll tell you that. Talking Wombat, it's important to note that China is presently Venezuela's #1 oil customer. Do you think that provides the U.S. any impetus to control Venezuelan oil? Maybe, but I think that, yeah, definitely they want it instead of China. They want to be able to control world oil pricing. And Dissent in Bloom was saying the same thing, that it gives them leverage over China, who exports most of, who imports most of Venezuela's crude. Mm-hmm. Agreed. That is a benefit. But I think that the big part of it is that the U.S. oil companies want access to those reserves first and foremost. They want to tap that, and they want to be able to set the global price and control the global price of oil and be able to manipulate it as much as possible based on what they're buying. Fuck the Trump administration for that. Desert Mantis is over on Odyssey. I've got Odyssey working, and yes, we can put Odyssey chats up here. We can put Substack chats up here. I'm going to do a tech tips show on Thursday night, and I'm going to show you the tool that I use to do that, called Social Streams. Very cool. They want to tap that. Yes, they want to tap that oil. They want to tap that oil, but it's very dirty oil. It's very dirty. It needs to be refined. We have to refine it. It's very sandy, very dirty oil. Very dirty. Odyssey did stop taking USD. That's an interesting thing we can talk about on Thursday night as well. That this new move that they're going toward USDC, which is Circle, and toward a new crypto platform. I talked with Ryan a little bit about it. They're working with the Independent Media Alliance to set up what their new thing called Portal. And that is very similar to Substack, is actually, it's my understanding, in that you're going to be able to publish and live stream, and it'll be more video focused than writing, but still you'll be able to write. I think you can do it there now if you want. Support independent media, because we need it more than ever. Those are the people that support our network. The ways to support our Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, IndieNewsNow.com. We're live over there right now. That's our website. INNnewsletter.com is our weekly newsletter for the network that we're part of. And then IndieMediaToday.com. That's where we're live right now. That's my Substack. All the clips from this show go live over there on a daily basis. Email, original articles. I actually, again, wrote one last week about the state of labor reporting in this country, which sadly is pretty bad, in my opinion. Neilio Nostrum, welcome to the stream, sir. Yes, we could do better reporting on labor issues. It's a depressing topic. The working class is not so proletarian as we would like. The unions are a mess. The unionized are willfully ignorant. Totally agree with all that. But what's missing in my mind is the perspective of the worker. Not enough people are talking to the people that are actually making the things, that are on the factory floor. And the managers that are on the factory floor that aren't necessarily the union leadership that are seeing the real problems every day. We will be back next Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for another Indie News Now Live. Support independent media because we need it more than ever, fam. I love you all. Have a good night, everyone. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
A couple of people have pointed out to me that what we're starting to see is that the U.S. military is starting to move closer to home. And that they've decided that fighting half a world away is not nearly as economical as controlling the hemisphere of influence that they have a much easier time controlling, which would be South America. They also are obsessed with Africa for some reason, and we're going to find out why at some point. I don't know when, but let's get into what's going on right now. So first off, Pete Hegseth, Whiskey Pete, we know all about him. Again, this is Dave DeCamp, Anti-War News, Indie Media Award honorees. There's a report that Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, formerly Defense, but of course they had to spend $2 billion to change the name. He ousted the head of the U.S. Southern Command who started raising concerns about these boat strikes, these murders without trial that are being ordered on boats coming out of Venezuela. Admiral Alvin Halsey, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, who abruptly announced that he was stepping down in October, was pushed out by Pete Hegseth, according to the Wall Street Journal. The report said that Hegseth and Halsey were at odds during the first months of the Trump admin, and the tension intensified when Halsey expressed concerns about the murky legal authority for the bombing campaign against alleged drug boats in Latin America, which is clearly illegal under U.S. and international law. Halsey also objected to the parts of the operation that fell outside of his control, since other military units under separate chains of command were also involved, including elite special operations units. What were they doing? Earlier in the year, Hegseth was unhappy with Halsey for not drawing up plans to reclaim the Panama Canal quickly enough, and suspected that the four-star admiral may have been involved in leaks of potential U.S. plans for the waterway. Remember that they were trying to force China to give up its stake in the Panama Canal, and they basically used BlackRock to buy the controlling towers at either end of the canal that gave it a lot of control anyway. Hulsey, of course, hasn't given a reason for his early retirement, which is highly unusual for a career military officer just 1 year into a 3-year term as the head of a combatant command. When he first announced he was stepping down in October, the Times reported that he had raised concerns about the boat strikes. Pretty clear what's happening here. At the time, Hegseth praised Hulsey in a statement on his retirement, which always happens, and officials told him masked policy tensions concerning Venezuela that the admiral and his civilian boss were seeking to paper over. Remember that Hegseth is a civilian, or has been for decades, and that he was not a good soldier, allegedly, while he was there, again, carousing, drinking, not a leader, not what a 4-star general does. The revelation from the Journal that Hegseth pushed at Hulsey comes as the U.S. war chief is under increasing scrutiny over the first bombing of an alleged drug boat on September 2nd, which involved more than one strike to kill survivors. Hegseth has shifted his story on the attack, now claiming that he wasn't in the room for the second strike, and has placed responsibility for the order on Admiral Frank Bradley, commander of Special Ops. They're all war criminals. Every single one of them should be in The Hague right now. Did we get attacked? Because the last I knew, we didn't. There's no justification. It's international waters, so it's fair game. The boat came out of Venezuela. Everybody knows it. But Venezuela isn't the only place that the U.S. military is acting up south of the equator. There's also been a bunch of stuff happening in Africa, as we've reported before, and I really have not talked about this. Reef and Colin have done a bang-up job talking about this. To his credit, Steve over at AM Wake Up has also been covering Dave DeCamp, who's like the only person that's been talking about, in our space at least, these strikes on Somalia. Did you even know that we've been bombing Somalia more than 100 times this year? Most people don't. AFRICOM announces 7 more airstrikes in Somalia as Trump continues record-shattering bombing campaign. The U.S. has bombed Somalia at least 109 times this year, which again is an unprecedented number. Coming from Dave DeCamp, Indie Media Award honoree, from Anti-War Indie Media Award honorees. That too. U.S. Africa Command has announced in recent days that its forces have launched at least 7 more airstrikes in Somalia as the Trump admin continues its record-breaking bombing campaign in the country, which receives virtually no media coverage in the United States. AFRICOM said in a press release, so you know that they're lying, that it launched airstrikes in Somalia's northeastern Puntland region on November 26th, 27th, and 28th, which it said targeted the ISIS affiliate in a remote mountain region about 37 miles to the southeast of the Gulf of Aden port city of Bosaso. ISIS. I thought ISIS was like affiliated with us in Israel, basically. They're like our terrorists. The command said in another press release that it launched more airstrikes against ISIS in the same area of Puntland on December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. A separate airstrike that was launched on December 3rd targeted al-Shabaab near the village of Kobon in the southern Jubaland region, according to a third AFRICOM press release. Why are they putting these out? Why are they even bothering? Nobody's paying attention to any of this. They have to, because they have to account for something. Somebody's going to ask a question at some point. The 6 days of U.S. airstrikes in Puntland came after the commander of U.S. AFRICOM, General Dagvin, visited the region and called for the war against the ISIS fighters hiding out in caves to be intensified. Sounds like we're cleaning up our own mess. The U.S. had been backing local Puntland forces since the region is not under control of the Mogadishu-based federal government. The command didn't specify how many airstrikes it launched, but counting each day as one bombing brings the total number of U.S. airstrikes in Somalia this year to 109, an unprecedented number. Why? President Trump has shattered the previous record for annual U.S. airstrikes in Somalia, which he had set in 2019 at 63. According to numbers from New America, which tracks the U.S. air war in Somalia, President Joe Biden, the fossil, who wasn't really operating his own foreign policy, allegedly, launched a total of 51 airstrikes in Somalia throughout his entire 4 years in office. And Obama had launched 48 over 8 years. Again, between the two of those Democratic presidents, you're talking 99 airstrikes on Somalia. How often has Somalia attacked the United States? Why are we launching airstrikes in that country? Trump had launched 219 during his first term. And then we're already at 109 during the second term. The U.S. has been involved in Somalia for decades and has been fighting al-Shabaab since the Bush administration, the W administration, backed an Ethiopian invasion in 2006 that ousted the Islamic Courts Union, a Muslim coalition that briefly held power in Mogadishu after taking the city from CIA-backed warlords. Al-Shabaab was the radical offshoot of the Islamic Courts Union, and its first recorded attack was a suicide bombing that targeted Ethiopian troops occupying Mogadishu. The ISIS affiliate in Somalia that's now based in Puntland started as an offshoot of Al-Shabaab and first emerged in 2015. That's weird, because we were backing ISIS in other places, or at least not fighting against them in Iraq and Afghanistan and in other places. Hell, the head of ISIS in Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is now the head of Syria, al-Jilani. Like, what? Kudos to David Anti-War. Yeah, that's right, Desert Mantis. Kudos to you for hanging out over on Odyssey. Yes, we're live on Odyssey. INN goes live to Odyssey as well. And then we publish all that to our page afterwards. And shout out to Anti-War, because they're celebrating 30 years in existence. Turns 30 years old today. Happy birthday, antiwar.com. And they're doing a year-end fund drive. They're a 501c3. So if you're able to support independent media, they're user-funded as well. So what do you think about what's going on in Africa and Venezuela? It's weird. I mean, look, they've got to find, I guess, something to use the military on. And to continue, now that they're going to wind down Afghanistan, it seems they have to find places to shift where the money is going to go towards, so they can justify that $1 trillion military budget. We're going to talk about that next week, too, because I think the Congress is finally passing that $1 trillion military budget. Support independent media, because we do here. You don't really see us cover any corporate media stuff. I try really hard to support and amplify independence and go to a trusted independent source wherever possible to get the story. I think it's really possible to do that. That means that we are self-funded and we don't take advertiser funding and we don't take donor money and we don't take sponsor money. We have you. So we rely on you tipping through Cash App, $ Indie News Network. We've got paypal.me/Indie News Network. We also have co-fee.com/Indie News Network. That'll go over to PayPal. And we've got our website, IndieNewsNow.com. That's where we host the news there. We have a news aggregator so you can read all independent stuff, not just us, from a ton of different sources, and watch us live and get merch and. So check that out at IndieNewsNow.com. We're also live at IndieMediaToday.com. That's our Substack. So go check us out over there. And also live over at, we're also check out Indie News network. That's IndieNewsNow.com. That's the newsletter for the network that we're a part of. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you, fam. See you next week. No! We just fucking lost the stream.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to me, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
All right. Now, again, this is going to get extensive, but we're going to start with what happened in Venezuela. So, what happened? 5 days ago, and this was published on Saturday. So, Saturday morning, we all wake up. Now, we've been talking about Venezuela for a while. Saturday morning, we all woke up at 2 a.m. that special forces went in and captured and kidnapped. See, I used corporate media's talking point. They kidnapped Maduro and his wife, allegedly at gunpoint, but without a shot fired, and weird. But we all found out that he was being arrested, put on a helicopter, and taken to the U.S. to stand trial. So Dr. Rami Al-Adwan started with that 5 days ago, the real president of the United States, Bibi Netanyahu, visited the U.S. 4 days ago, the U.S. issued new sanctions against targeting Iran and Venezuela. 3 days ago, Netanyahu claims that Iran could send arms to Venezuela because they're in cahoots. 2 days ago, Netanyahu leaves the U.S. And then today, the U.S. bombs Venezuela and kidnaps Maduro and his wife. Huh, that's weird how that timeline happens. It almost looked like Trump got marching orders from the real president. Vanessa Beale, Indie Media Award honoree. All right, she says Trump peace bombs Caracas. The U.S. is a terrorist state. And here are some of those bombs being dropped over Caracas. You can see the sorties and you can see the explosions. There's the planes and ba-boom, 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 coordinated droppings, explosions. Right? And then you have this one. Looking at it from much higher up, much higher elevation. Just where all these explosions are. Right? So, what happened? So Eva Bartlett says, another Indie Media Award honoree, first, Trump's fake war against narco-terrorists. Now the U.S. criminals unleash a series of bombings on Venezuela. The U.S. ambitions are very clear, and it has nothing to do with protecting Americans or bringing democracy to Venezuela. It's the same murderous, thieving playbook which the U.S. uses to pillage and destroy. And she used some of the same footage, but she also has this video from RT. Okay. All right. She published back at the end of December that here's the reality of U.S. ambitions in Venezuela. Just check that out. All right. Again, there's a lot to get to. Jason Hickel, bombing Venezuela while coordinating a genocide in Palestine, while threatening to attack Iran again, while destabilizing Somalia, while carrying out a heist in the Democratic Republic of the Congo? U.S. imperialism is the greatest threat to peace and security in our world today, and it ain't even close. Agreed. Mentioned Carlos Latouf earlier. Here's another cartoon of his, of the criminal gangster Trump with a ski mask on in front of the TV cameras. We're in possession of the elected president, Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Here are our demands. Surrender, hand over your oil and sovereignty. Accurate. Hadi Nasrallah. The U.S. can kidnap a president from a sovereign country, drag him into its courts, call it justice, then turn around and sanction the ICC for trying to arrest a war criminal committing genocide. I don't think you understand truly how broken this world is because of the United States. Agreed. Richard Medhurst, who got eaten alive a little bit for this, but I think that it does bear some form of repeating and to point out that this is probably the least of it, but covering his eyes and ears to deprive him of his senses is yet another war crime, something the Americans do all the time. And taking a photo of a detainee to humiliate them or satisfy public curiosity, also a Geneva Convention violation. That is the picture of Maduro on board the Iwo Jima with sensory-depriving glasses and headphones in a tracksuit. Where's his wife? No pictures of the wife. Stenton Bloom recorded a 7-minute video. I'm not going to show this whole video. It's a little bit long. I know we're running long. I got a lot of stuff to show. And she talks about a lot of the stuff that we talk about. But she had this right in August. Back in August, she basically predicted all of this. Watch that video. CIA played an instrumental role in Maduro's kidnapping. This is another very long article by Jeremy Kuzmarov of Covert Action Magazine and Too Hot to Handle. So check this one out. The financial elite that the CIA serves is now salivating over the prospects of U.S. corporations retaking control of Venezuela's oil industry. Specifically, a guy by the name of Paul Singer, who 2 months ago was awarded Citgo's oil. All right. So again, that's Jeremy Kuzmarov, and there's a lot in this article. It's super long. It goes back decades. Again, you're seeing pictures of Creole oil, Creole petroleum, and John Lonigan, and 1976, father of now President Delcy Rodriguez, right, died in prison after being interrogated by U.S. intelligence agents. There's a lot of history here that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know. All right. Yeah. Nicolas Maduro charged with felony oil possession. Haha. Right. Continuing, Reef actually found this early on Saturday morning. Something from Joe Biden. Well, it looks like Trump is doing the old Biden plan, bombing Venezuela. Do y'all really get how new boss, same as the old boss, rinse and repeat is getting really fucking stale by now? Please, I beg you, look at who's actually making decisions and why they're doing it. What do we mean? Well, let's pause. Let's start over.
To put it in very personal terms for a moment, Joe Biden, me, I would settle for a world in which I could worry about the same kinds of things that my parents worried about, in which I only had to worry about the grades my children got in school rather than the drugs they're being exposed to, in which I only had to worry about the prices my wife had to pay at the supermarket instead of fearing that she might get mugged by a junkie in the parking lot as she loads her groceries into the car.
Listen to this shit.
In which tonight I could call my mom just to wish her pleasant dreams, not for the purpose of making sure she's safe in her own home. That's the kind of world I want. That's the kind of world you deserve. In a nutshell, the president's plan doesn't include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs.
He loves cops.
Not enough prosecutors to convict them. Not enough judges to sentence them. And not enough prison cells to put them away for a long time. We disagree with the president's decision to cut back on our previous commitment to protect against drugs coming across the border, to cut the Customs Service, the Coast Guard, and the Border Patrol. We think we should do more to stem the flow of drugs across our borders, and we think we should go one step further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live, with an international strike force. There must be no safe haven for these narco-terrorists, and they must know it.
Huh.
And we don't have to promise a world without
Narco-terrorists.
worry or fear. We're not asking for that much. All we have to do together is to keep our promises and stay together. Thank you.
Fuck off, you imperialist war criminal puke. Venezuela analysis. U.S. authorities no longer, again, my point is that Trump used this exact same narrative and line of talking in order to try to build this case for why he had to go do this. And then, of course, when he got to New York, they didn't mention anything about drugs, fentanyl, narco-terrorism, or anything. They blew over 100 boats out of the water. No explanation, no trial, no evidence. U.S. authorities no longer even bother to specify why they're conducting the extrajudicial murders. By our count, it's up to 37 boats and 115 civilians assassinated. At least 115, because in the December 30th bombings, there were alleged survivors. All right? And here's U.S. Southern Command bragging about blowing these boats out of the water. We have no standing or authority to do this. They claim it's international water. Why are we doing this? Why? Here's Gen X girl pointing out that Trump is no different from the warmongers that he claims to hate. 89, here's Bush abducting President Noriega. Now, abducting or kidnapping heads of state is nothing new, right? And what about Bush capturing Hussein or Gaddafi or Hugo Chavez, which they abducted and then brought back 72 hours later? Let's hear George H.W. Bush talking about Noriega, minute 15.
And to safeguard the lives of American citizens. And that is why I directed our armed forces to protect the lives of American citizens in Panama and to bring General Noriega to justice in the United States.
Good afternoon. Yesterday, December the 13th, at around 8:30 p.m. Baghdad time, United States military forces captured Saddam Hussein alive. He was found near a farmhouse outside the city of Tikrit in a swift raid conducted without casualties.
Wow. Huh. Unconfirmed. Yeah. Unconfirmed. No. Unconfirmed reports about Gaddafi being captured.
And of unconfirmed reports.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
No difference. Fuck the duopoly. Shout out to Gen X Girl for the video on this one. Matt Kennard pointing out that Starmer said that he needed to establish all the facts before commenting on the capturing and kidnapping illegal rendition of Maduro. What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation, and he was waiting for his marching orders before he had an opinion. Fucking cowardice puke. Now, Colin challenged people who there was an entire narrative, even coming from corporate Democrats, about what a dictator Maduro was, except that he was legally, duly elected in his country in 2024. We covered that on How Do We Miss That? And a lot of other journalists did. Colin points out the idea that Maduro is a dictator is based purely on political, racist propaganda. Global South countries who don't tap dance for the Western Empire are considered backwards or communists or dictatorships. Unfortunately, even the educated among us are not immune to this thinking. And he said he was disgusted with people from church that were fear-mongering and talking smack about all of this and, you know, getting with the red, white, and blue propaganda. Yeah, get those commies. And again, they play into this fear-mongering constantly, and they're good at it. Asal Rod points out the way that they whitewash imperialism is with headlines that most people read. They captured Maduro. They didn't kidnap him illegally. They didn't invade a sovereign country. They captured him. And this was across the New York Times, the BBC, Reuters, and CNN. All the same narrative. The same word to describe exactly how they took him. Weird. Weird that they don't use illegal, war, coup, international law, violation, or sovereignty. This is how you normalize imperialism. I said they also never say regime change, which is what they are trying to accomplish here. Next, David Icke pointing out and sharing this video, which was shared by Wall Street apes. Venezuelans are crying on their knees, thanking Trump. Except this is AI and it's complete bullshit, and it got community noted. This is the kind of Israel slop being generated. All right, David Icke, the propaganda lies are coming at us like machine gun fire at this point. All right? There you go. Then you've also got, I needed to bring some levity and some humor to this whole thing because it's really insane. All right? Trump abducts elderly Venezuelan couple because taking hostages is good now. In the humanitarian move of the decade, the U.S. has bombed a sovereign nation and abducted its leader to liberate the world's largest proven oil reserves. The move happens to be in violation of international law, but this shows the law didn't want Venezuela's oil to be free. Clearly, the law is the problem here. The blood on the streets of Caracas isn't even dry, but Trump has confirmed that U.S. corporations will be selflessly involved in the rebuilding effort. It's unclear if Trump will stop murdering Venezuelan fishermen, but he will continue to bomb Maduro loyalists because only those who obey him are allowed to live. This is how freedom works. Excitingly, the U.S. abducted President Maduro and his wife from their home in a move that was surprising because the U.S. told us it's wrong to invade a country and take hostages. If you're struggling to keep up, just know that whatever Trump says is always right. The U.S. has confirmed that several of its soldiers were injured during the elderly couple's abduction. All the injured soldiers agree it was worth almost dying so oil billionaires could get another payday. Their selflessness truly knows no bounds. Maduro is facing accusations of drug trafficking that have the unfortunate snag of zero evidence. However, his wife is 100% guilty of marrying him, and therefore she's getting the electric chair. Awkwardly, a U.S. report mistakenly admitted that Maduro does not play a role in the drug trade. As Maduro himself pointed out, he has oil and gold, so why would he need drugs? Small details like that are unimportant, though. What matters is that we're pretending that Maduro smuggled drugs into the U.S. That is much worse than when the CIA smuggles drugs into the U.S. Trump said that the abduction of the Maduros sends a message that the U.S. is not going to be pushed around because it definitely wasn't the U.S. that was being pushed around in this equation. It definitely was the U.S. being pushed around in this equation. There's optimism that Trump will abduct other leaders such as Gustavo Petro, who was wrongly elected by the Colombian people. Petro is likely to be charged with seeing Palestinians as human, which is also one of Maduro's many crimes. You understand why he had to be stopped. The U.S. located Maduro with the help of a CIA source, also known as a snitch. The snitch is set to receive the $50 million bounty that the U.S. was offering for Maduro's capture. But let's be honest, we would all sell out Keir Starmer for $50 million, so who could blame him? Well, it turns out that the U.S. is quite capable of arresting foreign leaders as long as there is not an international arrest warrant out for them, like in the case of Netanyahu. That is one situation where it would be wrong to arrest an international leader, right? Trump doesn't recognize Maduro as the leader of Venezuela, claiming that the Venezuelans did not elect him. He would therefore like to install Maria Machado because Venezuelans also did not elect her. Consistency, of course, is important. Machado, who has a face that Venezuelan children see in their nightmares, was jubilant as bombs rained down on Caracas. She cheered on the murder of her people like only a winner of Nobel Peace Prize could. The U.S. believes in freedom and democracy so much that it wants to install Machado, even though 91% of Venezuelans disapprove of her. Machado was aware that this move would be controversial, so she's decided that Edmundo Gonzalez should be the one who gives the oil and gold to the U.S. She's a true patriot. If Venezuelans protest against the looting of their country, they'll be gunned down in the street because that sort of thing's only wrong when it happens in Iran. The U.S. is making preparations to ensure Venezuelans never elect a socialist again. Obviously, it's terrible when elections are rigged in Latin America, unless it's somewhere like Honduras where the U.S. was doing the rigging, in which case it's fine. Although Venezuelans were overwhelmingly against the airstrikes and abductions, the BBC was only able to interview the handful of Venezuelans that supported them. Amazing. One teary man even said that, at last, our oil is free. It might not be used to fund our services or help the Venezuelan people, but at least Trump has it now. I only hope he can continue to bomb our people to remind us to know our place. The BBC is confident that this person's views are totally representative of ordinary Venezuelans, and so is Laura, of course. Tongue planted so firmly in cheek. I love that writer. Amazing. Normal Island News, another Indie Media Award honoree. NormalIsland.co.uk. Go subscribe, go support them over there. Vanessa Beeley also wrote an article, 14 points on the Trump kidnap of Venezuelan President Maduro on the 6th anniversary of the Trump assassination of Soleimani. Oh, yeah, he did that too. That was really Michael Bolton, apparently. John Bolton, not Michael Bolton. Michael Bolton saying what a man loves a woman. All right, so read the Vanessa article, thewallwillfall.org. This one I wanted to go through, and I know Angel in the Afternoon did a bang-up job the last couple days. If you want a lot more about what happened and what's going on in Venezuela, Angel was covering it in real time on his show. He did a show Friday for a couple hours. He came back and did a special on Saturday after they kidnapped Maduro, and then after they had him in court for an indictment, okay, and read the indictment and charged him, he went live last night and did another hour and a half. Go support Angel over at Angel in the Afternoon, right? So Esha, over at Historically, friend of the show, she published this incredible thread, and I want to go through this because this just shows what amateur hour this whole thing really is. Reading this alleged indictment against Maduro, right away, she points out that right in the first paragraph in the introduction, they mean to say export, but saying that he corrupted once legitimate institutions to import tons of cocaine into the United States. No, Venezuela was exporting tons of cocaine. And that's just the first mistake of a ton of little mistakes that they clearly rushed through and did not take their time. There are very rarely legal kind of documents that look like this. She says the National Assembly, when it was opposition controlled, passed zero laws. Therefore, this claim was such bullshit, all right, of him disbanding that. Right? The complaint about the low quality cocaine shipped to New York is hilarious. Right? And that possession of machine guns, dude, he has an entire army behind him. What do you mean he has possession of machine guns? He's allowed. He's the leader of a country. All right? Here's the ICJ ruling of the Democratic Republic of Congo versus Belgium. Heads of state are immune from foreign prosecution. Southern District of New York calls Maduro a de facto but illegitimate to bypass this. That's also nuts. Says who? Edison Research? Is the U.S. sure that it wants this precedent given previous presidential conduct here? Probably not. Right? Keep going. Here's more bullshit. One charge is that supporting a foreign terrorist organization, but the Zetas were not designated one until 2025, right? But they're talking here about the Zetas. You see the Zetas highlighted there, right? And that was back before then. It was an object back that he did engage in contact that would be punishable for distribution of 5 kilograms, right? The Zetas before all of this. I don't see the date on that one there. But this, between 2003 or 2011, they weren't even designated as a foreign terrorist organization until 2025. This part is charging Venezuelan diplomats for doing diplomatic activity in Mexico. There's absolutely no jurisdictional nexus. Okay, more again about Venezuelans doing activities in Mexico. Again, no U.S. jurisdiction. Perfectly legal. Venezuelans can ship whatever they want in domestic flights within Venezuela. Right? And that 3 Brits were arrested, but again, not in the U.S., no jurisdiction about all this coke that was found on a flight from Venezuela to Paris. So why are we getting involved in prosecuting him for this? And yes, they're allowed to fly planes. And please describe the U.S. statute that describes relying on a culture of corruption being illegal. We rely on a culture of corruption in Ukraine, in Israel, in a bunch of places around the world. Right? There's all again, she just goes through, she nails this entire thing. This is what thousands of tons of cocaine looks like. Again, they describe thousands of tons or gazillions as a unit of measure. All right? Thousands of tons, grams, kilograms, that's a unit of measure. But thousands of tons would be 1,300 mid-sized cars. I don't think that they flew that many tons of cocaine. This whole indictment's a joke. What they were charging him with is insane. I'll bet you this was the first draft that literally it says drug traffickers, but it really is about oil companies. Unreal. So go through all again. Someone also brought to her attention that the Air France 2013 shit, these suitcases that would have to be filled with nothing but cocaine, 1,300 of them, 41 suitcases. Sure, that just happened. They're not sending their best. Then here's a little twist. Surprise. Maduro hired Julian Assange's lawyer, whose name is Barry Pollock, the guy that actually got him out of prison, to represent him. I just thought that was interesting. That's Barry Pollock, according to RT. You also, again, thanks to Golden Monarch for sharing this, that the leader of the Venezuelan opposition, Machado, this was back in 2024, had proposed using Bitcoin as a strategic national reserve asset. Bitcoin is not an asset, folks. It's digital, whatever. It's a risk. It's not an asset. Assets have return on investment. All right. Besides the appreciation that it may gain. That there is nothing behind Bitcoin. I hate to say it, it's scam, it's sham. Flip it as soon as you get it. Again, I go back to Sir Escanor, who talks about, and he again is accusing even Maduro of possibly being in on this. Pre-lit, pre-approved, pre-packaged for TV. The Venezuela celebration clips are straight up staged, faked, repurposed, and pushed by engagement hookers who grift off feeding you bullshit. Prostitutes like Wall Street Apes that I showed before, Betty Johnson, who I talked about in the Somali thing, and Alex Jones, Dinesh D'Souza, Eric Doherty, you've seen a lot of him, and these clowns Cat Turd and Gunther Eagleman and Nick Sortor, so many more. If you look at what happens every single time, if everyone sees exactly what they were trained to see, if you're on Team Red, Trump save Venezuela. Team Blue, fascism, imperialism. Well, that's true. If you're a truther, Zion, banking, the Jews did it. Well, no, but it definitely did have Zionist backing. If you're a boomer, cartels and fentanyl and drugs, national security. And if you're the finance nerds, oil and debt and crypto rails and so on and so forth. Same footage, different hallucinations, because the footage isn't the point. They need you assigned. They need you in a lane, a tribe, a script, a leash that feels like freedom. So when you argue Maduro versus Machado or USA versus China or Zionist versus anti-Zionist, they're quietly wiring up the operation and feeding. That's why it always smells like coordinated theater. Maduro plays the villain, Machado plays the liberator, Trump plays the savior, Israel plays the invisible hand, China plays the looming threat, Russia is the Jaws song, oh, da, 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 always in the background, and the audience plays itself. This is design, not chaos. A behavioral lab where your outrage becomes a metric, your shares become a signal, and your opinions become a profile. It's all fake. But you know what's not fake? The control grid that they build while you're watching along and arguing about which asshole or empire on television should hold the leash. Again, Sir Escador. All the players, they're all imperialists. We all have no say over any of this. And then to tie this further to Israel are the Isaac Accords. And I think Reef and Colin talked about the Isaac Accords on INN News, which is similar to the way that the Trump administration previously in the first admin had pushed the Abraham Accords across the Middle East. They want a deal for the solidifying support for Israel across South America with the Isaac Accords, Isaac being Abraham's first son. And again, this is another long article by The Dissident, INN co-founder. Go support him at the307.substack.com, and he will help wrap this into a neat little bow. By the way, did you know that Javier Milei and Benjamin Milekowski, a.k.a. Netanyahu, are distant cousins? A lot of people here probably did, but for those who didn't, yeah, that's true. All right. This relates to the Isaac Accords initiative, modeled after the Abraham Accords, in an attempt to gain further influence in South America. And this is talking from Robert Inlakesh. We reported on this last month, talking about this article of why Israel is so interested in Venezuela. Both I reported on this show, and then the next night, Reef and Colin read the same article on INN News, unbeknownst to each other. All right? So, wow. I mean, it's remarkable that this has all been able to go down the way that it has. That there aren't more people, that are so many people are falling for it because, like Escanor said, they're placed into their own little bubbles and their own little kind of groups. And everybody is screeching part of the narrative, but very few are stepping back. Thank you so much from Kameshwari Kate. But so few are stepping back and looking at the big picture. Let's see what Kate has to say. Thanks for the breakdown of all the lanes. It gives structure to the way we all see things from our own lanes and end up fighting with each other. Thank you, really. Yeah, we need to be fighting again. Punch up. And I can't stress that enough. We need to be punching upwards. Right? And again, all these reports, with the exception of the one from Axios about walls, these all came from independent sources. We can do this and report on what's happening and call out the bullshit and exactly why this is happening and how and who's motivated and benefiting from it by using exclusively independent sources. All right. That didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would to get through all of it. Wow. Did I miss some of it? No. We're going to be up to fuck Israel right now. Awesome. Before we get to that, support independent media because we need it more than ever. I appreciate everyone. We're not monetized by YouTube. Hopefully, maybe in 2026, INN will be remonetized. Congrats to our friend and brother JB for getting his channel remonetized. I think we say fuck Israel too much on this channel to be remonetized. And if so be it, I also don't really like having our money tied to the platforms. I prefer having it separated. So I ask that you support our network by doing one of these things. Go to Cash App, $ Indie News Network, or ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, like Kameshwari Kate just did, or over at paypal.me/IndieNewsNetwork, at patreon.com/IndieNewsNetwork. Over at our website that we host called IndieNewsNow.com, there's a section to tip the network via Stripe and keep the news free. We're also over on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com and over at INNNewsletter.com. Seven Sign has a question about Cocaine Mitch. So she was asking about, was it Mitch McConnell and his wife? Yes, they were all, there wasn't McConnell's Asian shipping family wife was also, where are we? Yep. Also made Trump's Secretary of Transportation. Yes, there was a murder or mysterious death of a young family as well. Cocaine boat. Yes, I distinctly remember that during the first Trump administration. Cocaine Mitch, they call him. All right, and now he's resigning. Turtle Coke. That's right, Kurt Boss. Thank you again for supporting independent media. Thanks for supporting me. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon, fam. I love you. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?